on the same page. Let's work our way out from that. What is wrong with the idea that we can live in an egalitarian society where rights aren't taken away from somebody else or somebody else has privilege?
It's not about taking away rights from other people. You see,
no, but they don't have the same.
The alt-right and against white people asserting themselves are looking at things from a very myopic point of view, where they happen to be in the majority population, and because of that, they happen to have, you know, a lot of representation within society. But if you went to Japan, you would see the Japanese most represented by that society. Or if you went to Africa, you would see African people most represented by that society. And in fact, white people are a very small and dwindling percentage of the global population. We're something like 6% of the entire world population. So when people are trying to be overtly nice or politically correct by saying, let's bring all these people from other countries that are poorer than ours in and help them, what you're doing is you're not helping them, you're destroying us. And we are unique people. We have a right to exist just like other people do. And if they
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Habitat from us, it's sort of like if you had a bullfrog.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
And then you started flooding the rainforest with bullfrogs from China, and they were competing for the same resources to survive. Eventually, the Chinese bullfrogs were overwhelmed the native rainforest bullfrogs, and they would cease to exist. That's not right.
I'm not going to get into a discussion about Chinese bullfrogs. I'd like to talk to you about what we might have in common and where we differ.
You mentioned violence, and I've already made clear that I don't support or condone any violence on any side. When I was at my press conference, people came up and attacked me while I was saying those words, and I saw you at the court case for these people who were found guilty of attacking me. So I want to ask you about Antifa. Do you disavow Antifa violence?
I disavow all violence.
Mm-hmm. So do you agree?
I also don't think that Antifa as an organization is a violent organization. I think you're painting with a broad brush again. I mean, you're pulling out people who are violent, and there are bad apples in every organization who are there to instigate. But you're saying all of Antifa is violent, and that's just not accurate.
I would say that it's one of the core principles of their philosophy, though, is that they think that everybody who disagrees with them is a Nazi and is going to implement a genocide if they don't stop them from speaking. They feel like the ideas of the alt-right movement are so powerful that they're so seductive that people will believe them. And I think that they are right. I think they just have a bad understanding of what the implication of those ideas are. And Antifa has made clear time and time again, punch a Nazi, because they believe that they have a right to use violence to shut down ideas that they don't like.
Yeah, like I said, I don't agree with violence, but would you deny that there were violent people on both sides there, that you guys were also violent?
There was violence on both sides, and that's unfortunate. And I think that came down to being the city government sabotaging the event. Because, yeah, I mean,
the cops and the government weren't being violent against anybody. It was, I mean, there were officers that died.
Left group and you have a far right group, and they both hate each other. And somebody like me is trying to do an event where both sides can have their free speech respected. I work with the police and tell them you've got to keep a buffer zone between the two groups that hate each other so they won't fight. And they know that. These kinds of protests have been done all over the country, from Pikeville to Shelbyville, everywhere in the country. But it was only in Charlottesville that this incredible violence broke out, and that was because the government wanted to shut it down. They wanted violence to happen so that we couldn't express our viewpoint.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that anybody wanted violence, especially in their own community.
I mean, it's...
You hold yourself accountable for the violence that happened there? I mean, you were the organizer of this rally that ended up with 3 people dead, 2 law enforcement officers, and a girl who was there to express her free speech.
Well, hold on. First of all, the police officers died in a freak accident in a helicopter.
If the rally hadn't happened, they would not have died. They would have gone home dead.
Come on, that's like if a butterfly waved its wings in Japan, would it cause a tidal wave in Hawaii? You can never know about this, that, or the other. And I'm certainly not going to limit my free speech or my constitutional rights because something bad might happen. As far as the Heather Heyer thing, that was also part of the police failing to do their job. They were supposed to clear the streets. There was a state of emergency, and it's not right what happened, but those protesters put themselves in a very dangerous, very risky situation because they were defying the state of emergency order. There were Antifa who admitted to chasing James Fields with an AR-15 rifle, and then there are people who clearly hit his vehicle from behind, which could have created a sound like a gunshot. But I just want to go back to one other thing real quick. You said that it's not true that the police and the Charlottesville government wanted violence. There was an investigative report done by a former federal prosecutor named Tim Heafy, and in that report he said multiple witnesses said Charlottesville Chief of Police Al Thomas said, "Let them fight. It will make it easier to declare an unlawful assembly."
Well, I wasn't there. I haven't heard that. I don't know what the truth is behind that. I don't think that anybody can really say. You certainly didn't.
Those were police officers who were around him. Those were his right-hand men who said that. And then beyond that,
did you hear them say that?
Multiple complaints of there being this culture of silence and intimidation about criticizing this police chief.
But it was one of the followers, an alt-right person who came to that rally, who ultimately drove his car into a group of people.
That's true, but he has not been found guilty. And I would say that there is a lot of reasonable doubt in that because the guy wasn't from the area. He probably got lost. There were other cars on that street that people weren't supposed to be driving on because police abandoned their post. They were supposed to be blocking that street. There's this Redneck Revolt Antifa member named Dwayne Dixon who posted on Facebook a picture of himself with an AR-15 and says, "I take perverse pleasure in knowing that I used this spikes lower to chase James Fields in his car prior to the car incident on 4th Street." He said that. So, I mean, the standard for self-defense using lethal force
to drive your car into a group,
have reasonable fear of your life and bodily safety, and that's an argument that his defense attorney can make.
So when you posted that Heather Heyer deserved to die because she was a fat communist, what did you mean by that?
That I didn't mean anything by that. That was dumb because basically I'd spent like 5 days of my life with people just attacking me left, attacking me right. I mean, even Fox News was going after me. My friends didn't know what to think. They were some people were turning on me because there were hit pieces everywhere, and I was stressed out. I was frustrated about the way things went down. I was frustrated. I felt like Heather Heyer was being used as a political tool for people who hated my rally and my movement and were trying to use her death for their political gain, for taking gun rights, for removing the Confederate monuments. And I had a little bit to drink, and it was a little bit too soon to when I take my sleeping medication, and my sleeping medication that I was taking at the time causes basically a blackout. Like, you don't know what's going on. I woke up the next morning and I tweeted it and I apologized. It was the wrong thing for me to say. And, I mean, you can try and judge me for that, but it's not indicative of my character or what my true feelings are.
I'm not here to judge you, Jason. What I'm here is to try and get answers so people can understand what happened. What was your purpose for starting the Unite the Right rally?
There were a number of things. It all started with the double standards that were in place here in Charlottesville, which in these far left cities, there is a reversal of the kinds of discrimination you're talking about that happened in the past, where white people are actually being discriminated against. And in this case, you had a vice mayor named Wes Bellamy, who made it his mission to take tax revenue from the majority white population, do reparations, redistribution. He was going after this Confederate statue to Robert E. Lee. He said Thomas Jefferson was next. And what were his motivations? I looked up on his Twitter account some keywords dealing with white, hate, etc. And he said, I hate white people. I hate seeing white people around town. White women are the devil. My favorite thing about being down south is seeing the look on the faces of little white men when they have to look up to me. So it just went on, and you could see that he had a hate agenda for taking down these monuments. And when I revealed that, he lost his job on the Virginia Board of Education at the state level, but no one even condemned him on the city council of Charlottesville. They let him stay there. They let him keep going after the monuments and white history. And if he was a white man who'd said even one of those things, if he'd said black women are the devil, as a white man, he would have lost his job. So that was the first thing, that double standard that really got under my skin. And the next thing was the monument and how it represents something larger than just history. It represents the replacement level immigration policies that are being favored by the Democrats and the left right now. So at the time that they are physically replacing the white population with foreign immigrants, they are taking down all the symbols of what our country used to be.
But it's more representative of what our country is now.
They're taking away our historical figures and smearing them and calling them racist, whatever. So that was the genesis of it. And I would add one other thing. I think that it's right for white people to be able to organize free of stigma. Now, obviously, Unite the Right didn't have that intended impact, but it should have. There shouldn't have been any violence at the rally. If the police department and the Charlottesville government listened to me and kept the two sides separated, I specifically told them, if you have the counter demonstrators, if you have Antifa in front of the venue and the alt-right guys are going in, they're both going to fight each other. And that's what happened.
So the folks on your side who brought, semi-automatic weapons weren't prepared to act violent?
Those people weren't on my side. I issued explicit instructions to people that I did not want anyone to bring guns, but because Virginia laws are inviolable on the Second Amendment, you can open carry pretty much in any public park. I couldn't deny people the right to do that. So I told them I would prefer if you conceal carry, because I don't want you to be scary or intimidating to people if you want to exercise those rights. The ones who came with the big AR-15s, those were militia guys. They weren't white power. They weren't pro-white. They weren't alt-right. They're conservative constitutionalists who are big Second Amendment guys. And from their perspective, they weren't coming to be part of my rally. And I told them it probably wasn't a good idea for them to be at my rally, because they don't want to be called racist or white nationalist or whatever. They just want to come and keep the peace between both sides. So I told them, I can't stop you from coming. But
I know plenty of militia members and sovereigns.
And I don't want you in my event with these big guns. Why don't you wait outside? And that's what they did.
But you can't deny the fact that there are, militia members and sovereign citizens and patriot groups. Maybe I should use air quotes on that one. But patriot groups that are, white supremacists or have white nationalist beliefs.
I'm sure. I mean, there's militia groups from every type of ideology possible. But as far as those specific militias that were at Unite the Right, I know enough about them.
Which militias were there?
New York Lightfoot militia, the the Pennsylvania Lightfoot militia, some people like this, 3%ers. And actually, after the event was over and people started calling them racist, they were very offended because they weren't there for any kind of racial advocacy. They were just there to support First and Second Amendment rights. And these are people who go to rallies all over the country. I've seen them in Berkeley. I've seen them other places all over the country.
But how do you justify, marching alongside swastika flags? I mean, you claim you're not a Nazi. You claim you're not a white nationalist.
No one was marching beside swastika flags. There was one guy with a swastika flag. No one knew this guy. The people in the alt-right are all like, who the hell was this guy? Is he some kind of a plant or something?
And that one guy was the one who was standing.
That's another thing. That's a misconception is like, I didn't want guns and I didn't want any KKK, any Nazi, whatever. And we were supposed to have bouncers at the front of the park, and police were supposed to have escorted us into the park and were supposed to help out the bouncers. And I told them, if anybody comes with any swastikas, if anybody comes with like Klan robes or whatever, they're going to have to be outside the park with the rest of the counter demonstrators, because I would not consider them Unite the Right demonstrators.
But who were the people that were chanting "the Jews will not replace us" in blood and soil? You're telling me that they weren't National Socialists or white supremacists?
So, okay, we can get into more.
Just that one guy carrying the swastika flag.
So there's several different questions here. First, were there some National Socialists? Yes. If I'm being honest, yes, of course. The speaker that I had, Matt Heimbach, is a National Socialist. The part of the issue is that if you're for free speech, you have to be strong in that, even when there's things that you're going to get attacked for. And I wasn't.
Do you have any African American speakers there speaking about their plight, or Latinos there talking about that? I mean, you were obviously representing white privilege, and you invited Nazis to this rally, so you were obviously okay with marching alongside them.
No, most of the people who were there were not Nazis. They were.
You invited somebody to speak who was.
See, the thing with being a pro-white person who's an extremist is that there are really very few people who can be pro-white without going to an extreme, because anybody who says something mildly in favor of white people or against political correctness or cultural Marxism, they have their lives destroyed. They're called a racist. People call their workplace and try to get them fired. They harass their families. The media puts out all these hit pieces on them. So like I was saying before, on the one hand, that further radicalizes some people. And then on the other, it's only the most extreme people who are going to show up for these in-person events. And everybody who was at the event knew that we didn't want to make this a thing where we're talking bad about anybody else. It was supposed to be in support of white identity and in support of our heritage.
But that's not what happened though, right?
No. Okay, so the thing that you're complaining about is the fact that they said Jews will not replace us. So first of all, I want to clarify that I was not chanting that. That wasn't something that I pre-approved and asked people to chant. But having said that, I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what they're talking about. One of the primary dominant themes of the alt-right is skepticism and criticism of Jewish power. In your parlance, where you use white supremacy, I would say Jewish supremacy, because Jewish people are so heavily represented in all the corridors of power in the United States. I mean, there's 7 Supreme Court justices and they have 3. They're 2% of the population. They give, I've heard, an estimated 40% of donations to political candidates. If you look at a chart of the people who are in key positions of leadership within the media, it's overwhelmingly Jewish. The Federal Reserve has been, until Trump's most recent pick, run by Jews for a very long time. So it's not the same thing to say you want to hurt them or you want them to die or be in a Holocaust, is to say they deserve to be criticized. No one is above criticism, not white people, not black people, not Jews.
Do you believe the Holocaust happened?
I don't know. I'm not a historian. I did have a question I wanted to ask you about that. I don't really have an opinion on that. But I did.
Everything that you're saying against, what you claim is this Jewish conspiracy is anti-Semitism.
Well, let me ask you about the Holocaust. Do you think that people have a right to ask questions about that and debate it, or do you think people should be imprisoned for questioning that narrative?
Well, I think denying is one thing and debating is another. I mean, revisionist history is not accurate history.
So if somebody is, as you say, denying it, do you think that they should be locked up in prison the way they are in Europe?
Yeah, I think that if you're spinning true fact into some conspiracy theory, I think that is, that's something that probably shouldn't be happening.
That's tough. What's true fact and what's a conspiracy theory?
Well, let's talk about true fact and
people who are in power in the government, and that just goes back to what I'm telling you about Jews having disproportionate influence of power and wealth. So they're the ones who are deciding what's okay to say and what's not okay to say, what the facts are and what the lies are. So that's why you've got to have a robust commitment to free speech, because no matter how sacred the beliefs of the society are, they have to be open to criticism. If something is so fragile that it can't be criticized, what good is it?
Well, I believe in free speech, but I think everybody has that same right. And when free speech incites violence, or when it oppresses other people, that's no longer free speech.
Yeah, but I don't want to go into that. The Holocaust isn't something that I think a whole lot about. I wanted to ask you, so since you have renounced white identity politics, do you still consider yourself white?
Yeah, of course. I consider myself a European, but that doesn't mean I consider myself better than anybody else, nor do I disavow the privilege that I have. I know I have privilege over other people, and I'm willing to accept that and make it, a more equal society, because I know I have that privilege. It's my duty to my fellow human beings to make sure that everybody has the same rights.
I get a lot of people sending me stuff on Twitter saying that you might be Arab. Have you ever had a DNA test?
I have, actually.
What was the results?
75% Italian. I think it was, and I'm off the top of my head, 20% Greek, 2% Caucasus, 0.1% Iberian Jew, and 0.1% Sub-Saharan African, just like everybody else.
All right.